Hi, and welcome to part 6 of the Humble Hand Brace blog and a corner of my kitchen, where we'll be discussing some of these braces and what to look for when you go out to buy a hand brace second hand. Now, I hope you'll bear with me because I've never done one of these video blogs before. There's no cameraman, but I do have a little remote here that I don't have a clue how to use, and the makeup lady never turned up, so you know, it is what it is, folks. The show must go on. I thought we'd break this into a number of different sections, and in the first section I'd like to talk about what to look for in terms of the condition you expect a brace to be in. And then I'd like to move on to different types of braces that you're likely to encounter, and then the sizes of a brace, and also why you would choose one size over another. And then I'd like to finish by answering a couple of questions that were raised by some of the commenters in the previous parts of this blog series. So come in a bit closer and we'll look over one of these hand braces and we'll go through the things to look for when you go out to buy a second hand brace. So I'm going to use Rusty, the hand brace that we restored in parts 1 to 4, and we'll just talk through some of the things that you should consider. The first thing I look at when I pick a brace up that's second hand is the wood. I'm looking primarily to see if there's any big chunks of wood missing out of the sweep handle and the head, and if there's any splits in the wood. And it's worth taking your time here, and if you wear glasses, put them on. You know, you don't want to get home, start rubbing down this wood and finding that there's a split in it and you've got to replace the sweep handle or the head, because neither of them are particularly easy to replace. If the hand brace passes that test, then I'll start to look at the metal components, and I usually start at the chuck end. The first thing I'm going to look at is, do the jaws meet together tightly? If they do, then I grab hold of the chuck and I undo it, and I unscrew it quite away, and then screw it right back up again until the jaws meet together, or at least you hope they meet together. The reason I do this is because sometimes the jaws can look like they meet together, but once you've unscrewed the chuck quite away and then done it up again, you'll find that some of the jaws don't line up properly. If they don't line up properly, then you've got to start to ask yourself, well, why? Why don't they align correctly? And try to ascertain whether it's due to a burr on the inside face of one of the jaws, or whether the spring isn't working correctly. Try to work it out and ask yourself, can I fix that easily? Let's assume that it passed that test. I then move along and I'm looking at where the chuck assembly meets the ratchet housing. Whether you can see this line here. So that's where, if I engage the ratchet, that's where it rotates around that point there. And I'm looking for movement in this direction. And if I grab hold of the chuck and just pull it and push it, pull it and push it, you can feel whether there's any movement there. A tiny bit is okay, but you really don't want a lot of movement there, particularly on a brace like this, because it's really impossible to remove that kind of play from this type of brace. The only thing you could possibly do is try to add a shim here, but I can't see that being particularly successful because this whole mechanism has to rotate, and in rotating you're going to dislodge that shim. So, you know, if you do have excess play in this direction, personally I'd put it down again and walk away. If it passes that test, then I engage the ratchet and I turn it slowly through one complete revolution. and I'm looking at the pawl. Does it spring out and return correctly? Do I hear a consistent clicking noise as I turn the chuck? If it works in one direction, don't assume it's going to work in the other direction. Test that also. One complete revolution. Sometimes you can get little burrs on the ratchet itself, and you're going to have to kind of file those away. It's slow work because you can hardly get any movement in the file. It is possible, but you know, you've got to appraise the brace and try to identify any of these little issues, and then ask yourself, can I be bothered to put in the work to fix all of these little problems? None of them are really unsurmountable, so you know, don't let it necessarily put you off, but it's just as well to be forewarned. Okay, so that's the ratchet. Then move on to the sweep handle. We've already checked, first of all, for any cracks or splits in the wood, and then check for movement along this way. Now, I did show you in part 4, I believe it was, how to fix movement in this direction. You may also get movement up and down, and the whole sweep handle will wobble. This is constantly rotating as you use it, so you're bound to get a little bit of wear on the inside surface. And a little bit of play is okay. And what you will find is if there's play in this direction, when you remove that by moving in the end caps, it will also sort out the play in this direction a little bit. The last thing to check is that it rotates freely, it doesn't catch at all. And as long as all that is okay, then we move on to the head. Now the head should rotate freely, it shouldn't bind at all, and check for play in this direction. So grab hold of the head and just pull it out and in, see if there's excess play there. Usually it is fixable, but like I say, it's just as well to be aware of the problems that this brace has. The next thing I'd like to talk about is the size of the hand brace that you're going to buy. How do you know what size of hand brace to look for? They do come in different sizes, and they're denoted by what we call the sweep. And you've heard me refer to this as the sweep handle. And the sweep is the distance from the centre of the sweep handle, and then if you rotate it by 180 degrees, it's the distance from where it ends up to where it started. So this particular brace I'm holding now is a 12-inch sweep. So from the centre line of the brace to the centre line of the sweep handle is 6 inches. Now, what's good about this size? Well, the longer this dimension is out to the sweep handle from the centre line of the chuck, the more torque you're able to apply with it. So if you need a hand brace for drilling large holes, say upwards of 3/4 of an inch, then a 12-inch sweep or a 14-inch sweep brace is going to make it a lot easier on your arms than an 8-inch sweep brace. They tend to go up in increments of 2 inches. They start at around 6 inches, then 8, 10, 12, and some hand braces went up to 14. Not all of them did, but you can get 14-inch sweep braces as well. So if you hear someone refer to the sweep of a brace as a 10-inch sweep or a 12-inch sweep, that's what it means. Okay, it's the diameter of the circle that the sweep handle moves through as you rotate it. So why would you want a 6-inch sweep brace? Here's a little Skinner brace. It's Rusty's cousin. This is a 6-inch version, and these are great for driving large screws. Really, really effective. And the fact that you've got a shorter sweep means that you can rotate it a lot faster than you could a 12-inch sweep brace. And so for driving large screws, very effective. Also great for countersinking. And then in between that you've got 8-inch sweep braces, which Rusty was one of. I've got 3 here, and here's a 10-inch brace, which is probably the most common size, certainly in the UK. It was really the size that if you were only going to buy one hand brace, you would go for a 10-inch. It can do most jobs. Really big holes, you're going to feel it if you're drilling out a load of mortises, for example, but you know, general purpose, it can do most things. So that's a 10-inch sweep. The different types that you're likely to encounter in this type of hand brace, at least, are very simple really. You either go for an open ratchet, which is what Rusty was, where you can actually see the ratchet and see the pulls moving on the ratchet, or you can go for a closed ratchet, an internal ratchet, where the ratchet itself is enclosed in a casing. In this particular one you can still see the pulls, but why did they enclose the ratchet? Well, basically because carpenters were tending to work in very dusty environments, and it helps to keep the dust and grime out of the ratchet mechanism so it keeps moving sweetly. So, you know, I personally don't find the internal ratchets any better than the external ratchets in terms of their function, but if you're going to work in a dusty environment, then look for an internal ratchet.